Hello footy fans, welcome to another episode of the Ultimate AFL Show for season 2016. Now this is episode 25, and in today's episode I'll be looking back at round 20. It was okay round, a few blowouts, a couple of close games and an upset, but it still was an okay round. Not the best round this year, but we'll look back at it and you can tell me what you think of it. Of course, I'm also going to be looking towards round 21, which is coming up this weekend and starting on Friday night at Etihad. So let's get straight in to looking back at round 20. Round 20 started at the MCG, the home of footy, on Friday night between the Tigers and the Pies. They met at the start of the year in round 2, where the Pies were winners by just a single point. This game turned out to be a very close game throughout the entire way. Collingwood had about a 2-goal lead, or just over a 2-goal lead at quarter time, but since that moment Richmond were able to take the lead at the half-time and three-quarter time breaks. At half-time they led by a goal, and at three-quarter time they led by 2 goals. So things weren't really looking quite good for Collingwood at three-quarter time, and then in the end Richmond were able to take the game away from Collingwood in the fourth quarter, and they won by a couple of goals. The final score, Richmond 14-8-92 defeated Collingwood 11-11-77. A big upset this one. Of course, we know that Richmond got absolutely demolished by the Giants in Canberra the week before. No one really gave them a lot of hope in this game. Probably the only people who gave them hope was probably Tiger fans. I even gave them no hope. I thought Collingwood were strong winners, especially after their game against the Eagles. But how wrong were we? They came out and played a sensational game, got the 4 points and got the win that they've wanted for such a long time, especially after that smashing against the Giants. So the goal kickers, Rewalt kicked 4 for Richmond. You then had Vickery kicking 2 for the Tigers, and the Tiger single goal kickers were Moore, Markon, Grigg, Drummond, Martin, Rioli, Ellis and Lloyd. You then had the Pies goal kickers, 2 each to Cox and Aish, singles to Adams, Cloak, Crocker, Varco, Wills, Pendlebury and also White. So, Collingwood very poor in this game. The Tigers, they triumph and get a win that they wanted for their coach Damien Hardwick, who was very emotional after the game, of course, especially after what the Tigers have been through this season. That was, by the way, this game was played in just over 49,000 people at the MCG. Saturday, it started at the SCG between the Swans and the Power. In fact, the Swans really just took the game away from the Power in the first quarter. Port Adelaide did not kick a single point or a single goal in the first quarter. They had no score to the Swans 6-5. So poor from the Power, but the Swans, they were able to put in a good effort in the first quarter and just basically demolished them all the way through. They were 9-10 to 2-3 at half-time, the Swans, 14-14 to 3-6 at three-quarter time, and then in the end, the Swans winning very convincingly, 14-16-100, defeating the Power, 4-9-33. The goal kickers for the Swans, Franklin kicked 2, Rowan also kicked 2, as well as Richards and Heaney for the Swans, Towers, Mitchell, Papali, Rampy, Kennedy and Handelbury kicking singles for the Swans. You then had the Port Adelaide goal kickers, only 4 goal kickers, and they were Gray, Butcher, Impey and Cracker. So the Swans winning that one very convincingly. Franklin probably could have piled on a few more than that. He only got the 2, of course. You have to get Rowan, Richards and Heaney in there to contribute as well. But very poor by the Power. The Swans very good, of course. We know that obviously they had some close losses to, of course, the Dogs and then the Hawks, but since then they've been able to turn things around, of course, and you know, win games pretty convincingly. Of course, the Dockers last week, and now Port Adelaide, and well, they've got St Kilda next Saturday night, so another chance for them to get another win. Okay, now this was one of the biggest upsets of probably the year, to be honest. In fact, it's probably the biggest upset of the year. I can't think of a much bigger upset than this. Melbourne and Hawthorn at the MCG. We know that they met earlier in the year. It was sort of a close game. It was in round 10 off memory. We know it was a close game. Melbourne did take it up to Hawthorn, but Hawthorn far too strong in the end. This was a different story. Melbourne, they led at quarter time. The score at half time, Melbourne 9-2 to 7-9. They led at three-quarter time, Melbourne 12-6 to 10-12. I think it was sort of close at three-quarter time the last time they met. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was close the last time they met at three-quarter time at the MCG. But to Melbourne's credit, they were able to take the game away in the fourth quarter and win pretty convincingly by over 20 points, nearly 30 odd points. In the end, it was 29. It was 29 points, and unbelievable. The final score 17-8, 110. Melbourne defeated Hawthorn 11-15, 81. Incredible, considering that Hawthorn obviously have won their last 9, I think it has been, and we know that they've been in sensational form. They beat the Swans a couple of weeks ago at the SCG, of course. Last week beat Carlton. They've had some great tussles and some great hit-outs with teams. But yeah, I tell you what, this was an absolute big upset. So the goal kickers, Melbourne, Watts kicked 3 as well as Weedman and Bug and Tyson kicking 2 each. Petrarca, Gorn, Hunt, Kent, Brayshaw, Vandenberg, and also Stretch kicked singles. The Hawthorn goal kickers, Rioli, he had a good day back from injury, kicked 4. Gunston kicked 2 as well as Segler. And then you had Smith and O'Brien kicking singles in front of way over 38,000, close to 39,000 at the MCG to witness what was one of the biggest upsets of the year. Melbourne haven't beaten Hawthorn for such a long time, but they've broken that drought. And now they've finally beat the Hawks. And, well, a lot of people now writing the Hawks off from a premiership. I'm not the same. I'll speak about that a bit later in Hawthorn's round 21 game preview. But, yeah, a very disappointing result for Hawthorn. Melbourne, they're in a right direction, that's for sure. At Metricon Stadium in the Gold Coast on Saturday twilight, the Suns had a date with the GWS Giants, the two newer teams in the competition, of course. Spoke about that in last week's episode. This was in fact closer than people thought. In fact, I'm sure a lot of people kind of thought that GWS were going to be a bit more in front at the breaks, but the Suns, to their credit, really did take it up to the Giants. They led by a goal at the quarter time break, the Suns. They led by a goal still at the half-time break, 9-5 to 8-5 at half-time. They led by a goal again at three-quarter time, and it was only in the fourth quarter the Giants were just able to get away in the last 5 minutes of the game, kicked a couple to basically extend their lead to about just over 2 goals and give the Suns pretty much no chance of winning the match in the end. But geez, this was a close game, and the Suns, they could have won it, but just taken away from them in the last 5 minutes of the game, or in the last 10 minutes of the game, as I mentioned. So the final score, the Suns 13-6, 84, defeated by the Giants 14-8, 92. The Suns should be credited because they were coming into this game real underdogs, but it shows that in the last couple of weeks, especially at Metricon, they've been able to take it up to some good sides and win. Of course, we know they've been pretty strong at Metricon Stadium in the last month or so. I saw them against the Lions last month, and they were fantastic at home against them. So they might be a real force at home next year, and maybe they might be on a big improvement next year. Who knows? Especially if they got Swallow, O'Meara added to their side, would be fantastic. The goal kickers for the Suns, Lynch kicked 4. That's another one I should have just mentioned then. Stunning player, big gun forward. He will win the Coleman medal in the next few years, I reckon. Matera, Davis, Wright kicked 2 each. Wright's another good prospect as well. You then had Nicholas, Hannon, and also Garlett kicking singles for the Suns. The GWS goal kickers, Cameron kicked 4. equal to Lynch's 4 of the game. Johnson, Patton, Green kicked 2 each, as well as Smith, Reid, Ward, Lobb adding to the goal sheet with singles. A bit to like about the Suns going into next season, especially if they get and have a good pre-season, get their players. The GWS Giants, well, they got the job done in the end. Of course, they're trying to notch up a home final. Possibly a top 4 spot is probably starting to look most likely for them. So they're pushing for that, but they can't drop in games like these, and they have to be able to win. But they've done it here, they've won, and I guess that's the main thing from a Giants point of view. Saturday night, ripper of a game between the Dogs and the Kangaroos. Winner of this game would be a confirmed team for the finals, so a lot to play for in this game. Of course, they met in round 6 on a Friday night, and North Melbourne won in the end in a low-scoring kind of close game. This game was actually quite low-scoring, only 3 goals in the first quarter, with North Melbourne leading 2-2 to 1-4 at quarter time, but the Dogs were able to lead at every change, not by a big lead, but they were able to lead at every change. 4-5 to 2-4 at half time, 7-7 to 4-5 at 3/4 time. The game was really taken away in the second half. The Dogs were able to get control over the game, and even though it was a close margin, you kind of, in the fourth quarter with 10 minutes to go, thought, nah, the Dogs have lots of control over this game. There's no way that they could drop points here, especially with how the game panned out in terms of the low-scoring nature of it, if you know what I mean. So the final score, 9-7-61, the Dogs defeated North Melbourne 7-5-47. The goal kickers, all multiple goal kickers for both sides in this game. There was no multiple goal kicker at all in this game. The Dogs, Dixon, Daniel, Bontempelli, Hovat, Johannesson, Hunter, Cordy, Roughhead, and Stringer, while for North Melbourne, Brown, Harvey, Dorr, Thomas Wells, Zeeble and Goldstein. That was their goal kickers in this match. So a good win for the Dogs. They are definitely going to be playing finals in season 2016. North Melbourne yet to sort of guarantee. It's most likely they will play finals. Let's just put it that way. But there still could be that mathematical chance that a team outside the 8 could get in there. But you would think North Melbourne, you never know. They have a tough run in the next 3 weeks, so you never know. But you would expect them to just get that top 8 spot. It will probably most likely be 8th. And the final game of Saturday was just a shocker. I didn't even watch this one because I watched the Dogs and North Melbourne like sensible people do, although I'm sure a lot of people did tune into this game, and look, to be honest, this just sums up the Lions' year basically. But however, on the bright side, the Crows, they're starting to really get in some good form heading into the finals. Of course, we know that they will play finals this season, and they could be the one to watch in the finals. 7-4 to 3-0 at quarter time, the Adelaide Crows led against the Lions. That's shocking. And then they piled on another 7 goals along with 6 behinds in the second quarter, and led 14-10 to 5-0. Led pretty convincingly in the third quarter, 22-13 to 6-1. Piled on 6 goals in that quarter alone, and then they piled on some more to give them a smashing win, 27-15, 177 to defeat the Lions 6-3-39. The goal kickers for the Crows, Walker, Lynch and Betts kicked 4 each. Jenkins kicked 3, Ellis Yeoman as well as Sloan kicked 2 each, and then Seedsman, O'Brien, Lyons, Crouch, Brown and Cameron got singles, while for the Lions, Matheson got 2, Taylor, Rockcliffe, Robertson, Rich got singles for the Lions. So the Crows getting in some good form. Of course, we know that they got a really good win against the Bombers last week. Again, they've got a big win second week in a row. Hopefully that doesn't kind of, how some sides smash a team the one week and then get beat the next. Hopefully they're not that type. I'm sure they're not, because they've got some big guns in their players. The Lions, what next for the Lions? That's the thing. Look, in my opinion, and Lepage, he hasn't done the best job, let's face it, but it's not all his fault. But I think at the end of the season he's probably going to go. I know, I know it was sounding like with Lee Matthews, etc., saying, that he will stay next year, but something has to give. They have to bring in someone. They have to do what Melbourne did, and that's bring in a Paul Roos type coach. It won't be Paul Roos, of course, but someone who's experienced, who's been there before, who can not rebuild the side, well, like rebuild the side, or at least set them up for the long term. Future. So, Paul Roos, we know in the last 3 years has come to the side, and now he's passing it over to Simon Goodwin, and obviously he's got the team in a very good direction, handing the coaching honours over. The Lions need to do something like that. Now, whether that's Brett Ratton or someone like that, I'm not too sure, but I think someone needs to come in and just look at the list and just, go to the draft the right players, and just play the best players they can, and try and get some confidence and some leadership into that side, because there's none whatsoever by the looks of things out in the ground. They're getting smashed every single week, and it just reminds you of Fitzroy days and stuff like that. It's not good. They need to do something. Maybe they should get a priority pick, the Lions. I'm not sure, but they can't be getting smashed each and every week, and this can't go on into next year. Sunday, there were 3 games to finish off round 20. The first game at the MCG between Carlton and St Kilda. Andrew Walker, in fact, was playing his last game in this match. I only watched bits and pieces of this match because I've turned a little bit of my focus more on the Olympics than the AFL at the moment, although I've still been watching the AFL like you would if you're a footy fan, but I also have been keeping a close eye on the Olympics as well. But I did watch parts of this game, didn't watch all of it. In fact, I was very surprised of how the Saints just dominated the Blues. I thought it was sensational. They led at every change and were pretty dominant in the end. 19-8-122, the Saints defeated Carlton 7-9-51. The goal kickers for Carlton, Membry kicked 5. The goal kickers for St Kilda, what I'm reading right now has them around the wrong way, so apologies for that. The goal kickers for St Kilda, Membry kicked 5, Bruce kicked 4, Billings kicked 2, Wright, Akers, Armitage, Weller, Robertson, Rewalt, Hickey and Nunes got singles for the Saints, and the Carlton goal kickers, Tui kicked 3, Cripps kicked 2, Gibbs and Armfield kicked singles each. So the Blues were a bit disappointing in this game, and the Saints, well, they still slightly keep their finals hopes alive. It's a bit unlikely, but I suppose they're still in the mix. But yeah, not a very good game for Andrew Walker to leave on, to be honest, especially when your team's got rooted, basically. The Cats were playing the Bombers at Etihad Stadium on Sunday mid-afternoon, and, well, a lot of people were basically building this game up to be a game that Geelong could get a bit of percentage, and, well, let's face it, it was a chance for Geelong to get a bit of a percentage. Didn't quite take the opportunity. They only won 15-10-100 to Essendon 4-10-34, so probably didn't get the big win as expected, but then again, they still got a big win. They would have loved to kick a bit more than that, though, and maybe make it by over 100 points, but didn't turn out that way. Geelong goal kickers, Hawkins kicked 3, Caddy and Cowan kicked 2, Cockatoo also kicking 2, and with singles came Dangerfield, Duncan, Guthrie, Mangillo, Motlop and also Stanley. Of course, Stanley 5 last week, only the single this week. And then the goal kickers for Essendon, Danaher, Francis, Grimley and McKenna kicking singles. And the final game of the round was the Western Australian Derby, of course. Fremantle and West Coast, very close game in the first half. In fact, Freo led by a goal at quarter time, and in fact they were only a goal behind, or just about a goal behind at half time, but then West Coast after that moment, after half time, were able to take the game away, win 17-8-110, defeating Fremantle 9-10-64. The goal kickers, Yaron, Sheraton and Pavlich kicking 2 for Freo, Ballantyne, Apnis and Walters kicking singles for the Dockers, and then the goal kickers for the West Coast Eagles. Kennedy piled on 70. Have to see if he still has that lead in the leading goal kickers in just a second. Hill kicked 3 as well as Lacrosse, and then Hum, Natanui, Turnbridge and also Gaff kicked singles as well in this game, in what was a good win by the Eagles in the end. Even though it took them a while to get going, they got a good win, and yeah, big game coming up for them in round 21, of course. Lost last week. They need to start winning consistently. Okay, time for the stats wrap up, starting with the leading goal kickers. Kennedy still leads with 67, of course, piled on 7 goals, was leading with 60, now leads with 61, and actually leads Franklin by 6 goals, who is on second. Franklin on 61. Lynch is on 61 as well. So the top 3 there, quite close. And then you've got 4th Eddie Betts on 54 and Jenkins on 52 in 5th. The leading disposals, Lockie Neal leads on 630. He's led for basically a couple of months now. And Dangerfield, though, however, is trying to catch him. He's second on 598. Hanbury in 3rd on 587. On 584 in 4th is Dustin Martin. Trelaw is also there as well on 564 in 5th. You then have the leading marks. Rewalt still leads the marks on 185. Doherty in 2nd on 152, as well as Shaw. Tom Lynch there in 4th on 139, and then in 138 and 5th is Cade Simpson from the Blues. Then you have the leading tackles. Pritter still leads the tackles on 152. Sloan in 2nd on 134. Ed Kerno in 3rd on 132. Swallow on 130 in 4th, and then Greenwood is on 5th with 128. And then despite that loss to Melbourne, Hawthorn are still on top of the ladder. They only lead by 4 points. The Swans, the Crows and the Giants are all level on points with 56. Geelong is in that mix as well. West Coast Eagles in 6th, the Bulldogs in 7th, and then North Melbourne in 8th. And then you've got St Kilda can mathematically make the finals, only 8 points behind North Melbourne in 9th. I tell you what, they need to win this week against the Swans if they're going to get in there. And then you've got Port Adelaide in 10th, Melbourne in 11th there, and then obviously you've got the other teams there as well. So that is the latter. Let's go now to round 21 preview. Okay, time now to get into round 21. It starts on Friday night at Etihad Stadium between the Dogs and the Pies. Looking forward to this game. It's at 7:50 p.m. I think the Dogs will win this easily. They should do. They'll come in strong favourites. You never know. An upset could happen, but I think the Dogs will win that game on Friday night pretty convincingly. I'm going to say about 30-odd points. Saturday, the first game at the Gabba is between the Lions and the Blues. Both teams lost by pretty convincing margins last week in round 20. Of course, the Lions got smashed, and you would have to say the Blues got smashed as well in the end. So this game at 1:45 p.m. at the Gabba, I'm going to tip the Blues. I think they should be far too strong. They were when they met earlier in the season. The Blues were pretty strong, so they should be pretty strong in their second meet of the season. At 2:10 p.m. at the G, the home of footy, it's the Hawks and North Melbourne. It's always a spicy contest when these two teams meet. A bit of huff and buff, a bit of argy-bargy. Got to love that in a football match. But a lot of people were writing the Hawks off after that loss to the Ds. They weren't great. It wasn't their best performance. And credit to the Ds, they were fantastic. But I think Hawks, being the great team they are, they'll bounce back this week. They'll bounce back and, in fact, win their next 3. I know they've got the Eagles next week at Domain Stadium, but who cares? They can beat the Eagles at Domain Stadium, and I think they will next week, and they'll go on and win their next 3. Of course, Collingwood in their last game around 23. I think being the good side they are, I think they'll win their next 3 and they'll finish top of the table. And even though they lost a crucial game against the Ds, they're still 4 points ahead. They'll beat North Melbourne this week, I reckon. Finish top, win their next 2 after North Melbourne. I think they'll win this game. It'll be a good battle, I reckon. But being North Melbourne's injuries and also the form they've been in the last couple of months since that 9 straight, I'm going to tip Hawthorn to be convincing winners in the end. The Saturday twilight game's an interesting one. The Giants and the Eagles. Now, the Giants could potentially win this at Spotless Stadium, but the Eagles, well, haven't been convincing away from home this season, haven't really been consistent away from home. So I'm going to tip the Giants. I think they'll win this game. It's a 4:35 p.m. start, so it is the twilight game. I think they'll win. I think they're starting to book a top 4 place at the moment. They their last two, of course, they've got North Melbourne in the last round, but they've got Freo next week, so I reckon they'll finish top 4 in the end, and yeah, I reckon they'll get the win at their home ground against the Eagles on Saturday. 2 Saturday night games at Etihad Stadium, the Saints and the Swans, 7:25 p.m. Even though the Saints are in, finals contention still, they'll come out this game firing, but I reckon the Swans will be far too strong. And then at Adelaide Oval at 7:40 p.m, Port Adelaide and Melbourne, they met earlier in the year. In fact, Port Adelaide were convincing winners in that game, weren't they? So I'm going to tip the... Oh, I'm not sure who to tip. I'm going to tip the Power at home. I think they might win this game, but could be a good game, this one. I'm not sure. I'm not confident with my tip, but I'm going to go Port Adelaide at home. Sunday, 3 games. Starts at Etihad Stadium, 1:10 p.m. between Essendon and the Gold Coast Suns. Of course, the Gold Coast Suns a couple of weeks ago came to Melbourne and lost by only a couple of points in what was a close tussle against Melbourne at the G. Of course, a close game last week. I think they're due for a win, and I think they'll get it in this game. At 3:20 p.m. at the MCG on Sunday, Richmond and Geelong meet. Richmond upset Collingwood, as we know, in round 20. Could upset Geelong in round 21, but I'm going to stick with the Cats. I think they'll win this game. And then the twilight game on Sunday is the Dockers and the Crows at Domain Stadium. I was nearly going to call it Patterson Stadium, but it's Domain Stadium these days. 4:40 p.m. start. The Crows should win that game. And that is it for this episode of the Ultimate AFL Show. Enjoy round 21, and until next week, bye for now.